I work nights at a distribution warehouse about 30 minutes outside of Cleveland. My shifts usually end between 1 and 2 in the morning, when the building is mostly silent except for the humming of forklifts cooling down and the buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. I'd been at that job for almost 2 years, and in that time I'd driven home in every possible condition: pouring rain, thick fog, heavy snow. Nothing ever bothered me about the drive. Until that night. It was early spring, the kind of night when the temperature drops fast after midnight, and you can see your breath even inside the car for the first few minutes. The sky was perfectly clear. The moon was bright enough to paint silver on the empty fields beside the highway. I remember thinking it was a beautiful night to drive. I clocked out around 1:40 a.m., nodded goodnight to the 2 guys still sweeping the loading dock, and got into my car, a gray 2014 Honda Accord that I'd bought used the previous winter. I remember the digital clock glowing 1:43 when I turned the key. I backed out of the lot and pulled onto the main road that led to the interstate. There's something oddly peaceful about being on the road at that hour. The world feels paused. The gas stations are lit like islands, and even the radio stations feel half asleep. I kept the volume low, letting some old alternative song hum in the background while the white lines slipped under the headlights. About 10 minutes into the drive, I noticed a pair of headlights appear behind me in the rearview mirror. That stretch of highway is mostly empty after midnight, so another car always stands out. It started far back, 2 tiny dots, but within a minute or so, it had closed the distance until the glare filled my mirror. I stayed in the right lane and expected the driver to pass. Most people on that road are either heading home from bars or truckers trying to beat the morning rush, but the car didn't pass. It just hung there, almost glued to my bumper. At first I thought maybe they wanted me to speed up, so I did. I went from 60 to 70. The headlights stayed exactly the same distance behind. I slowed down to 50. They slowed down too. The timing was too precise to be coincidence. A little voice in the back of my mind started whispering, "Maybe it's just some kid messing around." But even that didn't make sense. Who would tailgate someone this far out in the middle of nowhere at nearly 2 in the morning? I changed lanes to the left, hoping they'd go around. Instead, they mirrored me. I flicked my blinker and went back right. They followed. Now the irritation started turning into unease. The road ahead was open for miles, no exits for another few minutes, nothing but flat farmland and the occasional billboard. I tried to ignore the lights, focusing on the rhythm of the lane markers flashing past, but I could feel my pulse picking up. After another minute, I made a sudden decision to take the next exit ramp. It led toward an industrial area with a few all-night truck stops. As I merged toward it, I kept one eye on the mirror. The headlights followed. That was the moment it shifted from annoying driver to something else. The ramp curved gently upward before dropping into a service road. I took it fast, hoping to lose the car in the curve, but when I leveled out again, the same pair of lights appeared behind me. Still close, still steady. I gripped the wheel tighter. My heart was hammering. I remember whispering to myself, "What the hell do you want?" The gas station up ahead glowed yellow under the sodium lamps. I decided I'd pull in. Well lit, cameras, maybe someone inside. I turned on my signal and eased into the lot. The other car slowed too, but didn't follow me in. It stopped on the shoulder of the road, engine idling, headlights still aimed straight at me. I parked beside one of the pumps and killed the engine. My hands were shaking. I told myself, "Get out, stretch, act normal." Maybe they're just lost and waiting. Maybe nothing's wrong. But when I stepped out, the night air hit me, sharp, cold. And that's when I realized how quiet it was. No traffic, no insects, no hum from the station lights except a faint buzzing. The air felt heavy. The car was still there, about 50 feet away. I could see it clearly now. A dark sedan, maybe black or navy blue. No logo visible in the glare, no movement inside. The headlights were so bright they washed out everything behind them. I hesitated. Should I walk inside the station? Should I call someone? My phone was in my pocket, but the thought of turning my back on that car made my skin crawl. Then the headlights turned off. Just click, total darkness. I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes. I could barely make out the shape of the car now. sitting motionless on the side of the road. My gut said get back in the car, so I did. I shut the door, locked it, and started the engine again. For maybe 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then the car began to move. It didn't start with a rev or a flash of lights. It just rolled backward, slow and steady, like someone had taken their foot off the brake but wasn't using the gas. The reverse lights didn't come on. It coasted about 20 yards, stopped, then rolled forward again. Still no headlights. That made no sense. Even if someone was inside, they'd have to be driving blind. I threw my car in gear and drove toward the opposite exit of the lot, eyes darting between the road and the mirror. The sedan turned its headlights back on suddenly, and for a split second I thought I saw a silhouette in the driver's seat. But when I looked again, there was nothing, just the hollow glare of the lights. I sped out of the lot and back toward the main highway. My heart felt like it was trying to crawl out of my chest. I merged hard onto the ramp, tires squealing slightly, and glanced in the mirror. The sedan didn't follow. Its lights stopped right where the ramp curved out of sight. I drove the rest of the way home faster than I ever had before, checking my mirrors every few seconds. The headlights never reappeared. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for several minutes, breathing hard, watching the empty street. My neighborhood was silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. Inside, I poured myself a glass of water but couldn't stop pacing. My brain kept replaying those headlights, how they moved with perfect timing, how they went dark and rolled like gravity itself was pulling the car. The next morning, I checked the local news and police reports online. Nothing about accidents, pursuits, or even road closures. It almost made me feel stupid for being so shaken. But 3 days later, while grabbing coffee at work, one of my coworkers mentioned something that froze me. He lived in the same area and drove the same route home. He said he'd seen an abandoned car off the side of the highway near the industrial exit. Looked like it had been sitting there a while, he said. Airbags out. Windows smashed. Creepy thing was, no skid marks, no sign of a driver. I felt the blood drain from my face. I asked if he'd seen what kind of car it was. He thought for a second. Dark sedan. Maybe a Camry or something. Hard to tell. Police tape around it. That night after my shift, curiosity got the better of me. I took the same route again, telling myself it was probably just coincidence. Sure enough, near the exit ramp, I saw the flashing reflectors marking the tow zone. A dark car sat half hidden in the weeds, its front end crumpled. The windshield looked spider-webbed with cracks. I pulled over across the road and rolled down my window. The air smelled faintly of burnt rubber and wet earth. My headlights caught the shattered glass on the ground, making it sparkle like frost. There were no police cars, no tow truck, no sign of anyone working the scene. Just the car. Silent. Empty. I stared at it for a long time, trying to see if someone was inside, but the interior was pitch black. Finally, I told myself to go home. When I got back on the highway, I checked my mirrors again and again. Nothing behind me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that if I slowed down enough, if I really looked into that darkness, I'd see those headlights again, perfectly matching my speed. A week later, curiosity turned into something closer to obsession. I wanted an explanation, maybe a mechanical failure, maybe some prank gone wrong. I even tried searching local forums and social media for mentions of accidents on that stretch. I eventually found a short post on a local news site. It said that a sedan had been discovered wrecked near the ramp, but that it had likely been sitting there for weeks before being reported. Police suspected it might have been stolen and abandoned. No registered owner, no license plates, no identifying VIN. The part that stood out most. Initial inspection shows no sign of forced entry or hot wiring. Keys were found in the ignition. That made no sense. If it had been stolen, why leave the keys? And if it had been abandoned for weeks, how had it followed me just a few nights before? For a while, I tried to let it go. I forced myself to drive that route again, in daylight at first, then at night. Nothing strange happened. Life went back to normal, or mostly normal. But sometimes, even now, when I'm driving home late and the road stretches empty for miles, I catch myself glancing at the mirror too often. It's become an instinct, a quiet paranoia, and once in a while I swear I see a pair of lights far back on the horizon, moving exactly with me. I tell myself it's just another driver, just coincidence. But deep down, I remember that night at the gas station, the way those headlights blinked out all at once, how the car moved without a sound, how no one was ever found. Maybe there's an explanation somewhere in the realm of physics or chance. Maybe the car really was stolen and somehow rolled into place at the perfect moment to scare me half to death. Or maybe, and this is the thought that keeps me awake sometimes, maybe that stretch of road just doesn't let go of everything that happens on it. Because no matter how many nights pass, when I look into that rearview mirror, part of me is still waiting to see those headlights flare up again, matching my speed, refusing to pass. I used to drive long-haul deliveries across Pennsylvania for a small medical supply company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and I didn't mind the solitude. Most nights it was just me, the road, and whatever late-night talk show came through clearly on AM radio. One night in early November, I was driving north along Route 19, heading toward Meadville. It was about 2:30 a.m. The road was almost empty, the kind of black ribbon that seems to stretch endlessly between patches of forest and farmland. I'd taken that route dozens of times before. It was predictable, quiet, safe, until that night. I had 3 crates of medical tubing in the back of the van, lightweight cargo, nothing unusual. I was running on coffee and sunflower seeds, windows cracked just enough to keep the air fresh. My headlights carved tunnels through the mist that had started rolling off the fields. Then, up ahead I saw something pale on the shoulder of the road. At first, I thought it was just a plastic bag caught in the grass. But as I got closer, it became clearer. It was a person, a woman standing still on the edge of the road facing the trees. I slowed down instinctively. She wasn't moving, just standing there about 15 feet from the white line, her hair long and dark, her clothes blending into the night except for what looked like a light-colored coat. I remember glancing at the dashboard clock, 2:41 a.m. Who the hell would be out here alone at that hour? I eased off the gas and coasted closer. My headlights brushed over her and I saw her more clearly. She wasn't wearing a coat, it was a hospital gown, the thin, open-backed kind fluttering slightly in the wind. Her feet were bare. I felt my stomach drop. I slowed to a crawl and rolled down the window a few inches. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I called out, no answer. She didn't even flinch. The mist drifted around her like smoke. She just stood there staring into the trees. Every instinct told me to stop and help. But there was something wrong about how still she was. Not nervous, not shivering, just motionless. I put the van in park, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out. The gravel crunched under my boots. The cold air hit like a slap and it smelled of wet soil and pine. "Hey, do you need help?" I asked again, taking a few steps toward her. Still nothing. Then, as I got within maybe 10 feet, she turned her head, slowly, and looked right at me. Her eyes were wide open, but unfocused, like she was half asleep. There was no expression on her face, no fear, no anger, just blank. "Are you hurt?" I asked. My voice sounded too loud in the silence. She blinked once, then said in a small voice, "He's still out there." A chill shot through me. "Who's out there?" She didn't answer. She turned back toward the woods. That's when I heard it, a faint sound coming from deeper in the trees. A sort of crunch, crunch, like footsteps on damp leaves. I froze. My flashlight beam trembled as I pointed it toward the noise, but all I saw were the tangled branches and drifting fog. I looked back at the woman. "Ma'am, we need to get you somewhere safe. There's a hospital about 15 miles south. Come with me." She shook her head slowly. "He's still out there," she repeated, voice barely above a whisper. "Who is?" I demanded, scanning the trees again. The sound had stopped. Then she said, "He doesn't like the lights." Something about that sentence made every nerve in my body tighten. I took a step back toward the van, my pulse thudding in my ears. "Okay," I said carefully. "I'll call someone." I turned and walked fast toward my van. As soon as I climbed inside, I locked the doors and grabbed my phone. No signal, not a single bar. I looked up. She was gone. Just gone. My headlights still illuminated the shoulder, the grass, the start of the tree line, but she wasn't there anymore. I sat there frozen, scanning every shadow. Then I noticed movement in the trees again, but this time it was farther back. Something darting between trunks, too fast to be sure if it was human. That was enough for me. I threw the van in drive and took off, tires spitting gravel. My hands were shaking on the wheel. I drove about 3 miles before I saw a gas station up ahead. one of those 24-hour ones with a few semis parked outside. I pulled in fast and ran inside. The attendant, a bearded guy in his 20s, looked startled when I rushed in. "Hey, there's a woman out on Route 19, I blurted out. "She's wearing a hospital gown. She might be hurt or lost. You need to call the police," he frowned. "Hospital gown?" "Yeah," I said. "She said someone was out there. I heard footsteps." He picked up the phone and started dialing. I stood there breathing hard, trying to calm down. After he talked to dispatch, he said a patrol car would check it out. I stayed at the station for about 20 minutes before deciding to finish my route. I felt guilty leaving her there, but I wasn't about to go back. When I got home that morning, I couldn't stop thinking about her eyes, that blank, empty stare, and the way she vanished into thin air. 2 days later, I got a call from the local sheriff's department. They'd found my number through my company after confirming I'd reported the sighting. The officer said they'd checked the area thoroughly. No sign of a woman matching my description. But then he paused and said, "Funny thing, about a mile south of where you said you saw her, we did find something." "What?" I asked. "An abandoned vehicle," he said. "Looked like it had run off into the ditch a few days prior. Belonged to a woman who went missing from a psychiatric hospital in Pittsburgh. She escaped during a patient transfer last week." I felt my throat go dry. "Was she found?" The officer hesitated. "Not yet. We're still searching the woods. For a few nights I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made me think of those footsteps." A week later, I stopped by the same gas station again. It was on my usual route. The same guy was behind the counter. I asked him if they'd ever found the woman. He gave me this strange look and said quietly, "Yeah. Couple of hunters found her in a ravine off Route 19, about half a mile from where you said you saw her." I felt a weight settle in my chest. "Was she?" He nodded slowly. "Dead. They said she'd been there for days. Sheriff thinks she must have died before anyone even reported her missing." I blinked at him, not understanding. "But that's not possible," I said. "I saw her standing there. She looked alive." He shrugged, uneasy. "That's what everyone says." I stared at him. "What do you mean, everyone?" He hesitated, then leaned in a little. "You're not the first driver who's reported seeing her. Couple truckers have too. Same stretch of road. Same description. Hospital gown, bare feet. Standing near the trees, I just stood there, my brain trying to process what I was hearing. "But they said she's been dead for days," I whispered. He nodded again, eyes darting toward the window. Outside, the fog was starting to roll in again. "Yeah," he said. "That's what's weird. A few weeks passed. I kept driving the route. I didn't have much choice. It was part of the job. But I avoided that stretch after midnight whenever I could. One night in December, snow started early and traffic was crawling. I left late and didn't hit Route 19 until nearly 3 a.m. The fog was thick that night, like driving through milk. I had the radio low, headlights on high beam. My brain kept replaying that night. The hospital gown, the empty eyes, her whisper about him. Then my radio crackled. Just static at first. Then faint voices distorted like two frequencies bleeding together. And then, clear as day, a woman's voice came through. "Please."
"Stop," I slammed the brakes, heart pounding.
The road ahead was empty. The voice was gone. I grabbed the radio dial, twisted it frantically, and nothing but static. For a few seconds, I just sat there breathing hard. Then I pressed the gas and didn't stop until I hit the interstate. I told myself it was just interference and a random broadcast. But deep down, I knew that voice. It was the same voice that had whispered to me in the dark that night on Route 19. To this day, I avoid that highway whenever possible. Even the name makes me uneasy, and sometimes when I pass through northern Pennsylvania at night, I swear I see a shape standing just beyond the reach of the headlights, still, pale, and waiting. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's just imagination. But sometimes when the fog gets thick and the night is quiet enough to hear the wind shift, I can almost hear her again, whispering through the static. He's still out there. I've been driving for rideshare apps for about 5 years now. Uber, Lyft, even some local platforms when business is slow. Most nights are routine. A few airport runs, a couple of drunk passengers heading home from bars, nothing unusual. But there's one night I'll never forget, and it made me rethink the safety of every late-night ride I've ever given. It happened last February. It was a Friday. Cold, light snow falling, not enough to stick, just a soft dust across the windshield. I started my shift around 9 p.m. in Pittsburgh and had steady rides until about 1:30 in the morning. Was about to call it a night when I got one more ping. Pickup from a diner out on the edge of town, near Route 30. The note said, "Need a ride to Greensburg. Paying cash tip. Please hurry." Normally I don't drive that far out. It's about 40 minutes, but the bonus pay made it worth it. I accepted. When I pulled up to the diner, it looked almost closed. Just one car in the lot and the neon open sign flickering weakly. A man stood outside near the payphone. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, wearing a black hoodie and jeans. He didn't have any luggage or even a backpack. As soon as I stopped, he opened the back door and slid in without saying a word. The smell hit me first, like cold sweat mixed with gasoline. Not overpowering, but sharp. "You going to Greensburg?" I asked. He nodded, staring straight ahead. His voice was quiet. "Yeah, just drop me off near the old mill. I'll tell you where to stop." The way he said it made me hesitate. The old mill wasn't exactly a neighborhood, more like an abandoned industrial zone I'd seen before while driving day shifts. Still, I started driving. The snowflakes caught in the beams of my headlights, swirling like ash. The radio was off. He hadn't said a word since getting in. About 10 minutes into the ride, I tried to make small talk. "You work out there at the mill?" He shook his head. "No." Silence again. I noticed in the mirror that he was wearing gloves. Not unusual for winter, but these were thick. Black tactical gloves, the kind you'd wear for construction or maybe something else. He sat perfectly still, except for his right hand, which kept tapping against his knee in a slow, rhythmic pattern. Every instinct in me started buzzing. Something about him felt off. We passed through the last lit intersection heading into darker country roads. My GPS showed 25 minutes left. No other cars, just snow, forest, and the occasional old billboard. At one point, I adjusted the rearview mirror slightly to check his face. His eyes met mine instantly. Not angry, just focused, like he'd been watching me the whole time. I quickly looked away, pretending to check the GPS. My heart rate picked up. Then he spoke. "You ever pick up the wrong person?" The question came out of nowhere. His tone was calm, almost conversational. I forced a chuckle. "Not really. Most people just want to get home." He hummed quietly, like he was thinking about that. Then he said, "Sometimes you don't realize it's the wrong person until it's too late." I felt my stomach twist. For the next few miles, neither of us said a word. The only sound was the tires crunching over the icy road. Then I noticed something odd, his reflection. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking down, at something in his lap. I couldn't see what it was at first. Then the next bump in the road made the light shift and I caught a glimpse of metal. A knife. Not huge, but enough. Folded but visible in his gloved hand. My brain started screaming, "Stay calm. Don't show fear." I eased my foot off the gas slightly, trying not to make sudden moves. My eyes flicked to the GPS again. Next major turn was a right onto a side road that led deeper toward the old mill area. That wasn't happening. I needed to get out of this situation without setting him off. "Hey," I said casually, keeping my tone steady. "You mind if I stop for gas? The tank's low and the next stretch is dead empty." He didn't answer. Just kept staring at his lap. I glanced in the mirror again. His mouth was moving slightly, whispering something I couldn't make out. That's when I saw the faintest smear of red on the side of his glove. Blood. My pulse went wild. I had less than 10 seconds to come up with something. Anything. About half a mile ahead, I saw a glow, a gas station sign through the snow. I turned on my blinker early, forcing a calm rhythm into my breathing. He didn't object. Just stared forward again. As soon as I pulled in, I parked close to the front door, bright lights, security cameras, and a night clerk inside. I smiled tightly and said, "Just gonna fill up quick." He looked up for the first time in minutes. His eyes were dark, sunken, and unblinking. "Okay." I stepped out slowly, trying not to show the panic crawling up my spine. The air outside was freezing, but I barely felt it. I moved toward the gas pump but didn't touch it. Instead, I walked straight to the convenience store doors and yanked them open. The clerk, an older guy with a gray beard, looked up from his phone. I leaned close to the counter, keeping my voice low. "Call the police. The man in my car, he's got a knife." I think he's hurt someone. The clerk's eyes went wide. You serious? I nodded quickly. Don't let him see you call. He picked up the phone, pretending to check something. While I peeked through the window, the passenger door of my car was open, empty. The man was gone. I scanned the lot. No sign of him. I ran to the far side of the building, heart hammering, looking around the pumps. Nothing. The snow was falling harder now, and the only footprints were mine, leading from the car to the store. It was like he'd vanished. Within minutes, 2 sheriff's deputies arrived. I told them everything: the diner, the drive, the knife, the blood. They checked my car and found nothing. No fingerprints, no drops of blood, no trace he'd ever been there. The deputies took my statement and said they'd keep an eye out. But I could tell by their faces they didn't fully believe me. I went home shaken, barely able to sleep. The next afternoon, I got a call from a detective with the county police. He wanted to confirm the details of my ride and the diner location. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. There was an incident last night not far from where you picked up your fare, he said. A diner employee found a man dead behind the building around 2 a.m., stabbed multiple times. We think he was robbed. I went silent. The description you gave matches a man seen leaving the diner earlier on foot, the detective continued. We believe your passenger may have been the suspect trying to flee. My legs went weak. I sat down slowly, clutching the phone. You're lucky you stopped at that gas station, he added. He's still out there. We found blood in the diner and on the back door, but no weapon. The line went quiet for a moment before he said, If he contacts you again, call us immediately. I told him I deleted the rideshare record, but the truth was, I hadn't. When I checked later, that ride request had already disappeared from the app. Like it had never existed. For weeks, I couldn't shake it. Every time I picked up a late-night passenger, I checked the rearview mirror every few seconds. I even installed a small dash camera aimed at the back seat. But sometimes when I drove past that diner on Route 30, I'd see a shape standing near the payphone. Just a man in a dark hoodie facing away, head slightly bowed. One night, curiosity won. I slowed down, shining my headlights toward the lot. No one there. Still, I couldn't help but glance at the back seat when I drove off, just to be sure. Months passed. The case stayed unsolved. The police never found the man from that night. Then, one rainy evening while cleaning out my car before a shift, I found something wedged under the rear floor mat, a black tactical glove. Stiff, dried with something dark at the fingertips. I froze. It wasn't mine. I called the detective immediately. They came to pick it up for analysis. A week later, he called back. DNA matches the victim from the diner, he said. Looks like your passenger was wounded during the attack. You probably picked him up right after it happened. I let out a shaky breath. So you think he was running from the scene? Most likely, the detective said. You might have been his getaway ride, until he realized you knew something. He paused. You got lucky, son. I hung up, my hands trembling. That night, I sat in my parked car for almost an hour, staring at the empty rear seat in the mirror. Every sound outside, the wind, a passing car made me flinch. I still drive sometimes, but never past midnight, never near Route 30. And I check the back seat before every ride, because the thing about driving strangers is, you never really know who's behind you. And I'll never forget the feeling of his eyes in that mirror. The faint red stain on his glove and the realization that if I'd driven even a few more miles toward that old mill, I probably wouldn't be here to tell this story.